It's true.
Holy time, the day is ending with the setting of the sun. Holy time, the day has ended, now the Sabbath has begun. I can feel the blessings falling, sanctifying heart and mind. I can hear the Spirit calling me from care to holy time. Holy time, now God is with us. I can feel His presence near. I can hear His still small voices, heaven's peace and joy to share. God, I know that You are with me. I have always seen the signs, but there is nothing quite as special like when we meet for holy time.
Good evening, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. You are listening to the Open Portal, aired on Flashpoint Media Ministry every Friday at 6:30 p.m. So to our regulars, welcome. To our first-time listeners, it's quite I'm excited for you to join us, to join in the conversation, to share your thoughts, and thank you for joining. I am Bobique Brown, joining you virtually from Jamaica. So, hi. And it is truly a blessing to be guest hosting once again. At this point, Pastor Marquino and the team will have to consider me part of the Flashpoint ministry family. I'm calling it. And this is also my way of just saying thank you to Pastor Marquino and team for the invitation. Our topic today is one that sometimes gets boxed in by rules, by restrictions, and a long list of don'ts. But today, we want to flip that perspective and talk about the beauty, the blessing, and the do's of the Sabbath. We live in a 24/7 society. The world never sleeps. Either it's social media, which never stops, or the hustle is constant. But God, in His wisdom, carved out something special for us, the Sabbath. And I'll just pause to also say to our listeners, Happy Sabbath. We're at the end of the work week, and we give God thanks. Joining me is a special guest, and together we'll dig into what the Sabbath means for us today. Our topic is 24/7 world, 24 hours of rest. And how this day, the 24 hours, how it helps us to reset, how we can live it joyfully in a non-stop world. And my guest is Pastor Theodore Henry. I say pastor, but he is also a very dear friend. So if I say Theo sometimes, Pastor Theo, don't stone me. However, he is also someone who is quite passionate about this special day that was carved out for us. And I'm excited to have him as we talk more. So, Pastor Theo, welcome. This is your time to send your greetings from a small island, Jamaica.
Yeah. Thank you, Bobby, for welcoming me, including me in the introduction. And it is perfectly fine in this environment for Theo. I I like the less formality sometimes. And greetings to everybody who is watching, who will watch. Happy Sabbath to you. And I really mean happy Sabbath. You know how sometimes people who worship on Sabbath, they say like happy Sabbath is a thing we say. But I think when we say happy Sabbath, what I mean is any way that I can help to make this Sabbath good for you,
Hmm.
happy Sabbath.
Yeah. So
So
is there
happy
any way
Sabbath.
you can make the Sabbath good?
Right.
Be possible for you to, if I send you my NCV banking information, that would help to
I
make the
said
Sabbath better.
I said any way I can. So it has to do with what I can do.
Well, thank you very much for joining, Theo. And to our listeners, we're going to go right in. We're going to start the conversation. And our viewers as well, as we are live on YouTube, so not just radio.
Mm,
We're going to go into the first thing I want us to explore, and that's God's original gift.
right.
God's original gift. And I'm going to pull up Genesis chapter 2, and I'm going to read verse 2 and 3. So Genesis 2, verse 2 and 3. And I'm reading from the New Living Translation version. So it says, on the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was the day when he rested from all his work of creation, all the work that he
Mhm.
had done.
Right.
Right here, before sin even entered the world, God gave humanity a gift, the Sabbath. And I want us to notice three things. He rested, he blessed it, and he made it holy. This
Right.
here tells us that the Sabbath isn't just about stopping work. So for a lot of us, and sometimes even for me, the Sabbath in my head is just like, okay, work stop, the big pause. At least I have now, and I'll go into it later, where I now have a better sense of appreciation for the Sabbath. But the stopping work, I was one of those persons. So it's not just about stopping work, it's about stepping into blessing. The Sabbath wasn't given as a burden, it was given as a gift. And there's something else, like, I would have learned later on. And when we read Genesis chapter 2 as well, we can pinpoint it, where the Sabbath was humanity's first full day. So Adam and Eve, they were created on day 6, and day 7 was a day of rest and fellowship with God. Their life began with restlessness and not work. And I want us to
Yeah.
just pause and think on that. Adam and Eve's life began with rest and not work. Not to say that work is bad, but balance. And another thing is that God finished creation with Sabbath. It's not an afterthought, it's literally the climax of creation. It's a day for us to enjoy God's presence, not just earn his approval. And most importantly, it reminds us of our identity, that we're more than workers, we're more than students, we're more than hustlers. And when I say hustlers, I mean like persons who are doing like 3, 4 jobs, just doing what they need to do in order to make ends meet, because I know the word can
Right.
probably have some form of negative connotation there. But we are children of God. So Theo, I hear writing and and yes. I have a question for you. When you think about the way Sabbath was introduced at creation, what do you think God wanted us to experience through it?
So for those, well, Bobby knows this, but for those who don't, I like to go down to the root of the thing. So when the Sabbath was introduced at creation, how was the Sabbath introduced at creation? I got through a few things real quick. All right.
Mhm.
So the Sabbath was created after a period of intense and valuable activity, right? That a friend of mine once said, Sabbath really isn't for lazy people. It's for people who actually put some effort into life. So the Sabbath followed a period of intense and valuable activity by God. Uh, Adam had a little bit of work on his day of creation, but it followed activity, right? Two, the Sabbath was created in a very naturey environment, right? That the virgin earth, the Sabbath was created and slotted perfectly into that sort of environment.
Mhm.
The Sabbath was also created in a social environment. It
Mhm.
involved Adam, it involved Eve, and we'll go into this a little bit later, I believe. It involved God.
Mhm.
There was a society of at least three, not to mention all the angels singing glory, glory, hallelujah, as God points out to Job in the book of Job. So the Sabbath was entirely social as well. Uh, what else did I add? The core activity of this seventh day was rest, and we should open that up a little bit.
Mhm.
The seventh day gets its name from what God did in the Hebrew Shabbat, rest, meaning God, as we said before, he ends his industrious activity. So you're like in Genesis 1, you see thing happening after thing. God is working up to something. On the Sabbath, it's the least industrious, and I have to be careful with this, the least complex day of the week is probably what I should say. Right? It's the least complex day of create. And this is different from just sleeping, right? Because Shabbat, this rest that God took, this ceasing of his massive work that he did the last week, also involved an element of celebration, reflection, taking joy in what was done, sharing it with others. And as you mentioned earlier, Bobby, God blesses the time. He pronounce and blessing. Let's break up blessing a little bit. Is another thing that we say all the time. God does something spiritually to these 24 hours that makes it conducive to happiness and human welfare.
Mhm.
That's the core of blessing. And then on top of that, he makes it his. By making it holy, God marks out the thing as his. Holiness is God, and everything that is deemed holy in scripture belongs to God. The Sabbath belongs to God. So because of all of those things, Bobby, you mentioned one of them already. Uh, I think we have gotten to a point in human history, especially for the productive adults, where work has become a bit about God,
Mhm. Nice.
right? And the
Mhm.
other God, apart from the creator God of Sabbath, is a lowercase g and an idol.
Mhm.
I'm not just talking about in the generic sense. Bobby, you mentioned hustlers and making ends meet. God has taught me this, and it's a lesson that He keeps teaching me, and it's hard for us to learn
Mhm.
because the sin cursed earth. But I do not survive because I work. I survive because God keeps me.
Amen, brother. It's true.
I've lived through
Mhm.
moments where the money wasn't there, the opportunity were
Mhm.
there, and the scenario still. God was there, right?
Mhm.
So, based on everything that I had opened up in just
Holy
our
thought, Theo. Actually really love that. It's not because of the many jobs that we're employed in. It's simply
Mm-mm.
because of the God that we serve. And
Yeah,
that seems like such a simple statement because, oh, but if it wasn't for God, but it's just Him. There's no but. It's simply Him. And that's something that we need to think on actually, and let it resonate with us. So thanks for that. I like that. I like that you shared that with us.
right. So God directs our attention to the true source of our being. Paul writes, in him we live and move and have our being. It's not a theory, it's not spiritual mumbo jumbo, it's the reality. If God withdrew his care on the just and the unjust, his provision on the just and the unjust, who could have worked, who could have worked, who could have worked, who could have worked so till. Right? And Sabbath, because it is his, it is social, and it involves us and him. I believe one of the core things that Sabbath should be for us is a time to stop and put down the thing that we treat often as our source and come to the real source,
Source.
sort of be in his presence. And what can I do in God's presence, Bobby? One of the big things is to say, God, look on the work where you give me. I have this little book in my hand. Look at the work that you give me. Look what I did with it this week. Hmm? And
Right.
maybe it was a rough week. And I'm like, God, look on the work where you give me. But I trust you, right? It's just being in his presence and focusing away from the thing that that takes up our productive time. Bobby, I can say something right here, so I want to take a little left turn.
No problem.
In creation, when you read through it and read through how God speaks to mankind throughout the Bible, you get the sense that He is not always there. Not that He's absent, but He's
Mhm.
not saying, all right, Bobby, turn left, Bobby, turn right,
Right.
Bobby, go up
Yes.
the road, right? When you read through Genesis chapter 2, the first thing God asked Adam to do in terms of going out into the world and fulfilling the command to dominate and subdue the world,
Mhm.
right? God says, Adam, name the animal. Anything where Adam named the animals, God was what it was. That was what it was called. Can you imagine that? Adam didn't see the giraffe being created, but
Mhm.
then he looked at it and he said, that's a giraffe." I was like, "Yeah." So it's almost like God lets Adam go into the world with the strength He has given him, the opportunity He has given him, the work He has given
Gives
him.
him some freedom.
Yes, and then you have this moment of Sabbath, which Adam sort of and Eve sort of would present it back to the God who gave them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I feel outside of the context of sin, outside of the context of exhaustion,
Yeah.
one of the real things I see in Genesis that God intends Sabbath to be used for is a moment of putting down the work I've done, putting down the accomplishments I've done, as in not actively engaged in them,
Mm-hmm.
stopping from building them up, carrying them back to the Creator who gave them to me. Now we said work, include your family, include anything else that God
That's
has
where
blessed
I'm going.
you. Anything else that God has blessed you with, bring it back to Him on Sabbath
Mm-hmm.
and rest in the presence of the one who gave it to you in the first place. It really is a time to reflect because God never needs sleep, but He too rested. To look at His work and say, ah. Adam look at his work and say, ah. And Eve look at her work and say, ah. I'm pausing there. Unless you want me to go on.
I know that. So thank you for that though. And it's true. One representation that has helped me in just understanding how to treat the Sabbath and just how to treat the Creator as well is to think of Him as your friend. So like how I'll come to you, Theo, to let's say X happen, X place to there, Y happen. And that's what you're saying. Like we can present to Him what it is that we would have done throughout the week. But in order for us to even grasp that, we have to first not be so far removed from Him. I think that's one of the challenges we have. We're far, yes, He is holy, He is sovereign, He's supreme, He's the ultimate source, but He's also our Father and friend. And if we can think of it that way while maintaining the boundaries which ought to help us, then it will help us to also appreciate and treat the Sabbath how we need to and talk to Him how we need to. So I think that's one challenge we have in our minds. And
Right.
in your lot of person, He's just far removed.
Mhm.
And I think that's why
And,
it
and
also feels like a burden feel to
yeah,
some because of that restriction. The restriction starts from in our minds, not even just with the Sabbath, but in our minds with Him. You were saying
mhm.
something?
The far removed. This is why I brought up the idolatry thing. I've worked, I've done this, I've paid my bills. God is sort of an attachment for some of us unconsciously. And so Sabbath and giving 24 hours to God because it's His feels like another obligation as opposed to the right response.
Mhm.
My daughter doesn't have this problem. If she paints something, she's carrying it to daddy because they I am her context.
Right.
I am her context and my approval means a great deal to her.
Right. Which
When
I've
God
seen, by the
stops,
way, listeners. As soon
yeah,
as she does something, she's like, Daddy, look at this. Right.
when God stops being our context, we lose something critical to Sabbath keeping.
Yes. Thank you for that. And it transitions us into from don'ts to do's. Like, if we're being honest with ourselves, many of us grew up with Sabbath being taught as a list of don'ts. And I hope I'm not stepping on
Yes.
some toes, but I'm being honest because, as our listeners know, I have been a Christian and an Adventist all my life. So there's some things I can speak to also from experience or with friends or, but some of these don'ts we hear, don't engage in this or that, don't watch the TV, don't cook, don't shop, don't this. And while those boundaries protect the holiness of the day, sometimes we miss the heart of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is actually full of do's. We have do rest your body. So sleep, walk, breathe. Do refresh your soul. Worship, sing, pray, connect with God. Do build relationships. Theo touched on that. Family, mentoring, encouraging others. Do serve. This is one thing where I think sometimes we tend to neglect, especially on the Sabbath. Service, servitude.
Yeah.
Jesus healed on the Sabbath. He did good on the Sabbath. He showed that doing good is never against the law of God. Serving is Sabbath living, it's not breaking. And do practice joy. Isaiah 58:13-14 summarize. God says that we should call the Sabbath a delight and that we'll find joy in Him when we honor His day. So while we grew up hearing a lot of the don'ts, Sabbath is less about what you stop doing and it is more about what you step into. Sabbath, for some of us, the Sabbath is I have to go to church. So, as soon as I'm going to spend the entire day in the sanctuary. Theo said that he mentioned it earlier. When Adam and Eve were created, they were surrounded by nature. And I mentioned do rest your body, sleep, walk, breathe. Nature helps with that. So you can spend a part of your Sabbath or even an entire Sabbath in nature, just remembering the boundaries that helps to protect the holiness of the day. So Theo, like why from your perspective as a young person and not just a young person but a leader in the church, why do you think many people, especially young people, see Sabbath more as a burden than a blessing? And how can shifting from the don'ts to the do's change that perspective?
All right. So we need teachers and we need to pursue this as a matter. Right? Um, you mentioned the do's and the don'ts, in particular the don'ts. I like this analogy. Most people, when they hear about Fort Knox in the United States,
When they hear about what?
Fort Knox, that
Okay.
place, Fort Knox, it should bring to mind gold reserves, right? It's a military installation that holds the United States reserves of gold, which back the currency. I remember the money is just paper. It must have some real value under it. So it backs the gold. Now, imagine Sabbath as Fort Knox. The security at Fort Knox is intense, as you can expect. You have
Mhm.
checkpoints, you have cameras, you have drones, you have roving patrols, all to keep people out and to keep the gold in. But what if none of the gold was in there? I had all the drones and the checkpoints and the this and the that. It, the reason I like that is because you see when it comes to Sabbath and the don'ts, because we have spent more time protecting the integrity of the Sabbath and not as much time understanding the joys. You mentioned Isaiah, that passage from Isaiah, the delight and the joy that should result from keeping the Sabbath. What is that? What does that look like? How do I participate in that? We don't spend much time on those questions. We spend more time on protecting the Sabbath, it is almost as if the fort is empty because ain't nobody enjoying this, but the guards are in place.
Oh my gosh, Theo. I read this book. I will give you rest. And that was exactly what they said. Like eons ago. Eons. So let's say 1800s, right? Two guards were employed to actually let's protect a remote in a garden for the queen.
Right.
And they stayed there protecting the remote. But 1930, guards are still being employed. No, they no longer know what they're protecting. They just know that they need to stand in this
The act
spot.
of protection.
And
Right.
one of the guard, like call it now in the 2000s, was just like, nobody not coming out here. We don't say anymore. What are we doing here? And ask that question like, what is this for? Why are we here? And the person was like, I actually don't even know. And they asked and they got some answers. In the 1800s, there was a remote there to be protected for the queen. But that's no longer there. That's no longer there. But the tradition of it, and as you rightly said, they're protecting nothing. And let me be careful with the
But
word nothing. I'm here talking about the analogy.
right. But unlike our analogies, the Sabbath remains. The
Right.
blessing remains, the holiness remains, because nothing that God instituted at creation has been destroyed. Nothing.
All the same.
Right? So it remains there. It's just that we haven't looked into it very often. Right? So there is a traditional way in which Sabbath has been kept. And that has become the Sabbath.
And
And
that's
we
what's being
protect.
guarded.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
we use the dawns, which are necessary because we live in a sinful world and we have sinful
Mm-hmm.
entities to keep us in line. But you have to be kept in line with something. And psychologists tell you that positive reinforcement does more for growth and development, especially in children, than negative reinforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Negative reinforcement tends to create cages and barriers about activities
Mm-hmm.
that will create pain. So the child doesn't really even understand the thing. They more just don't do it out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas positive reinforcement tends to grow a person's understanding, grow a person's experience. So that's one of the things I think, especially young people struggle with. There is a lack of presenting the gold. What is the delight? What is the joy? But also for not just young people. There are some people you mentioned as a leader. For some people, especially in religious settings, Sabbath is the most difficult work day of the week,
It,
and it causes an incredible amount of cognitive dissonance in those
yeah,
of us who hear Sabbath is rest, yet at the end of it, I am exhausted.
tired.
This is not, it exhausts you. A tiring Sabbath exhausts you more than a tiring work day, I believe,
Oh
because
my
you
gosh.
expect work. You
Yes.
expect work to be tiring. But
Yes.
you're living in a state of cognitive dissonance where you're holding
Yes.
two ideas in your head that cannot agree. Oh, today's a day of rest. I am so tired. It's gonna be more tiring.
Agreed.
It's gonna be more tiring. So I think for those two reasons, in addition to more granular reasons, there are a lot of people who find it a burden for lack of understanding and lack of experience with what we are guarding.
Yes.
In practice, it tends to be the busiest religious day of the week.
Growing up, honestly, Theo, I used to use a stick and pull down the Sabbath.
Uh,
Simply as
Count it
you,
down, man.
yeah, man, like I'm in church because we stayed at church the entire day. And
Yeah.
I'd be like, we never have the access to Google, like how we have it on our phone to Google what time sun sets today. But
Mhm.
the seasons. So this season coming up, start get dark like around after 5, and you're just like, yes.
Ready.
No, I will say it's how we teach a Sabbath, which we'll get into, helped me to actually find that joy. I'll
Mhm.
never forget we had a program at church, and the Sabbath was one of the topics that was explored, and that changed my perspective because, like, I've always, and you mentioned that cognitive dissonance, where how I think, and that was then how I think we should be basking in the Sabbath, treating the Sabbath. That's not what I'm seeing in front of me. That's not what I'm hearing. But just from my own reading and understanding, it's like I don't think we're doing it the right way, And that was my struggle because who am I? My leaders, my teachers, it's being presented X, and what I'm seeing as well being practiced versus little me who, I could arguably say I'm still learning and I have a lot more to learn. That was my struggle until I realized that it's not just young people, but elderly persons who have been here forever. This construct of the Sabbath is a struggle for almost everyone. Finding joy, our Sabbath school teacher said to us that that's the day when the Bible records miracles being done. And as I mentioned, he healed on the Sabbath. That's a day where you can literally pack some lunch, someone is grieving, and you go and you spend that time with them. You make them feel and experience some amount of joy, especially given the situation of they're sick. That's also a day where you can just build others. So it's not you just building yourself, but building others. Also, the Sabbath is a day where I call it a pause now, resting in the art of the pause. I'm happy you used the word earlier, reflection. It's like, okay, what did I do this week that I probably shouldn't have done, that wasn't Christian like, or that wasn't, representative of being a child of God? How can I improve the upcoming week to ensure that, everything I do, he is seen within me? It's also time for that. And when I think about now how really we should live and how we should worship on the Sabbath, for me, it's no longer counting down because work ends. It's almost counting down for restoration. It's counting down to feel rejuvenated, to know that, okay, it's just me and him for these 24 hours undisturbed, because I have now acknowledged that he is my source, and he also, there are 2 questions in the chat, I'm told. But he is my source. I'm going to check them soon. He is my source, but he has also put me here to help in sustaining and encouraging others. And this is the day to do that fully undisturbed as well. And that has helped me understanding just the delight and the joy of the day. So the teaching is extremely important. Like extremely, extremely important.
Yeah.
And we mentioned the 24/7 world. We live in a world that never ever stops. As I said earlier, our phones are always buzzing. Assignments for those who are in school that keeps coming. Jobs demand more and more. It feels like we're expected to be on 24/7. But the Sabbath says stop. It says rest. It says trust. And Exodus 20, the commandment, verses 8 to 11, summarized again. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord. You shall not do any work on that day. God isn't being restrictive here. He is being protective. He knows our bodies. He knows our minds needs rest. And Sabbath is that weekly reminder that we're not defined by productivity. As Theo said, work has now been like the lowercase g, God in our lives. We are actually defined by our Creator. Sabbath reminds us that we're not machines. It reminds us that rest is resistance against this always on world. It also builds trust in God. As we see with the Israelites, we're studying Exodus this quarter, where manna didn't fall on Sabbath. So we rest because we trust that he provides. It's good for our health as well, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And most importantly, I find for me that Sabbath levels the ground, right?
Mm.
Everyone resets. So whether you're rich, whether you're poor, all of us alike, whatever it is our background, it levels the ground for us and we all reset. So that's something to think about in the Sabbath in a 24/7 world. Like, how have you? I shared my personal experience there, and while you're sharing, I'll put up the questions. How have you personally experienced Sabbath rest helping you handle the pressures of the week?
And two experiences I'd like to mention. One, I was at a river on Sabbath, and
Man, them stone, what were you doing at a river on the Sabbath, Pastor Theo?
enjoying the river. I was enjoying the river. So I was there with friends and my family, and we just were there eating lunch. Our foot was in the water. Yeah, developing. It's not like we went there to develop our relationships, but spending unconstructed time. Is that the right word? Time that wasn't broken up into I need to do this, I need to
I
do
need
that.
to do that, right?
In nature, it was a slower pace in a space that was useful for me. There is no human being who, or rather, let me say it this way, everything that we know about the human body tells us that we benefit from being in nature. Right? And so spending Sabbath time in nature beside a beautiful river where birds are chirping and out in the sunlight was very good for me. Right? It slowed me down. It gave me that pause and I enjoyed it. And I'll make a point after I make the two things. The second experience I'd like to point out is one Sabbath I went to a church and they had a rich, meaningful communion service.
Mhm.
And I was deeply in need of that communion service. Not just the activity, but also how it was done. It was a rich, well done service. Every moment of participation felt personal and necessary. I it was emotionally filling. And that just reminds me how Jesus said, as the Lord of the Sabbath, he said, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of man. I
Right.
don't know if we'll have time to touch on that a little bit more, but I would like to. But I have found, using those two examples, when I do not, oh, by the way, you see that communion Sabbath that I enjoyed a lot? I didn't have a great deal to do. I was at church, I was singing, reading from scripture, participating in the communion. The keeping the program running wasn't something that was on my mind.
Right.
It was being present and participating in not the program, but the thing that we had gathered to do, worship and communion.
Worship.
And so I find that when I do not spend my Sabbath in emotionally, mentally, physically exhausting labor, and I have that real spiritual feeling, right? So we know what it feels like to get rest. We know what it feels like to eat. We know what it feels like to fill other needs. Christians, if you want to get better at Sabbath, know what it feels like to be spiritually fed. So you know what you're aiming for. And
Yeah.
it's almost as if I was built that every 7 days I need to slow down and
Yes.
spiritually fed. And when is Bobby, you see those times when that happens, when I get a Sabbath like that, it changes the platform on which I start the rest of my week.
Yes. Mhm.
Straight up. It lasts for the whole week. When I do not experience all of those things on Sabbath, I do start the week worse.
Hmm. That says a lot. We're going to pause here for a break. When we come back, Pastor Theo, I want you to think on this question in particular. How does one explain to non believers the joy of the Sabbath?
Ah,
Yeah. And the other question is there a difference between rest, as was mentioned in Genesis, and rest, as was mentioned in the commandment? When we come back, we'll tackle those two questions. We'll now pause for a song.
Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be accepted in thy sight. Help me understand and make me wise. Oh Lord, my strength, my redeemer. Oh Lord, my strength. Oh Lord, my strength, my redeemer. Oh, I wanna please you, Lord. Let the darkness find your light. I will trust in you and make things right. Let my weakness find your strength. 'Cause I don't have any more. Oh, Lord, my strength, my redeemer. Oh Lord, my strength. Oh Lord, my strength, my redeemer. Oh, I wanna please you, Lord. Oh Lord, my strength, my redeemer. Oh Lord, my strength. Oh Lord, my strength, my redeemer. Oh, I wanna please you, Lord. Oh, you keep me safe in you. I know you see me through. When my life pleases you, I'll have peace in every season. You keep me safe in you. I know you see me through. When my life pleases you, I'll have peace in you. Lord, my strength, my redeemer. Oh Lord, my strength. Lord, my strength, my redeemer. Oh, I wanna please you, Lord. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be accepted in thy sight. But let me understand and make me wise.
Thank you very much for such a lovely rendition. That was very beautiful. And I love instrumentals, so hearing the keyboard being played as well, I absolutely love that. Welcome back. We are discussing the Sabbath 24/7 world, 24 hours of rest. For those of us who just are probably joining us, my name is Bobique, and with me is Pastor Theodore. And together we are just going more in depth and, tackling this topic that is a constant for us. However, can also be somewhat misunderstood. So we're flipping the script just a little and focusing on how much of a joy and delight this day that was given to us as a gift from the Creator is. When we took our break, I mentioned right before we did so, rather, I mentioned that there are two questions. So the first question asked, um, how does one explain to non believers the joys of the Sabbath? Theo?
Mhm. Well, I would say don't explain it. Demonstrate it. Demonstrate it in two ways. Demonstrate it in your own life. So let there be some joy about Sabbath in your own life. And then collectively, Sabbath keepers as a people need to demonstrate it in worship. Right? One of the reasons why you realize that there was a point in time, every online store, like a major online, like Amazon, for example, started having comment sections. So the seller can say anything they want to say about the product. We scroll all the way down to the comment section, see what people are saying about.
Yes.
I think the greatest testimony you can give for Sabbath personally is that you find it a joy and it makes you a joy to be around. And as a people, in that when people come to my church, have mercy. They, whether they are Christian or not, they leave feeling vivified by the music, by the praying, by the fellowship, and by just the chance to not be going at 100 miles per hour. Right? It, Bobby, it's like how if anybody does exercise, it's going to help them. Right? When we as Sabbath keepers can do that in our services, it matters not if the persons have been part. When they're a part of it, they're going to be like, hold on, this was a good day. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. So the answer, let us not just explain, or let's not rather, let's demonstrate. I hope that
And then when the
answers the
curiosity and when the curiosity comes up, then you explain.
then
Teach
you
them.
right. And the explanation will also still be some sort of demonstration too.
Right, right.
Um you use the word a lot, joy. What is joy, Theo?
Joy is anti-fragile happiness, whereas happiness is oftentimes a feeling that comes up because this or that.
Happiness is temperamental. It's like
Right,
fleeting. Yeah,
right. Joy, I would define joy as a state of being,
it is.
not the absence of challenge, not the absence of
Mm-mm.
difficulty, but the resistance to it. Where you ever hear people talk about the attitude of gratitude?
Mm-hmm.
Real thing,
Mm-hmm.
a way in which you fix your mind that it becomes set in in that state of pleasantness, interest, desire for life.
You can
That's the
see it, and you can also see it being, you can see it on your countenance as well. I think once you have a joyful manner approach, it is a state of being. It's not just
right,
something that's internal,
right.
it's also visible to others. And we have a saying, like, it's not even we have, it's true, it's a yarn catching. So for our non-Jamaican listeners, yarn catching, feel you're frozen.
It's contagious.
Thank you. Okay, right. So they say yarn catch, right, it's contagious. It's the same thing. Eventually, because of that state of being, others too, because that's how we're created ultimately, will want to be like, okay, no, what's happening here? I need to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this. I want to experience this. The
Hmm.
next question is there a difference between rest as was mentioned in Genesis and rest as was mentioned in the commandment? And I think it's it's a slight difference, but this is what I think, right? I think that Genesis rest is a gift of creation. So rooted in God's joy, rooted in completion and fellowship. And the commandment to rest is a command of covenant. So that's rooted in trust, freedom, and obedience. What
Mhm.
I also believe is that both are true together, Theo. So Genesis rest, as I'm terming it, shows Sabbath as part of God's original design. And the commandment rest shows Sabbath as a sign of identity, which we spoke about in the beginning, and also, deliverance. So that's what I think. I don't know if that answers the question. I don't know if you want to add something on that as well.
That's interesting. That is interesting. Identity covenant versus how we are meant to be, the
Yeah.
existence. That's interesting.
That's
Two
what
different
I
words.
think.
Well, two different words are also used in Genesis. You have Genesis 2, it's Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat.
Mhm.
In Exodus, it's Noach or Noach, depending on how you look at the letters. And I think to add to your definition, Bobby, Genesis Sabbath is in a perfect world. Sorry, not seeing my hand. Exodus
Mhm.
Sabbath is in a fallen world, right?
Yeah.
Let us never forget that working to survive or you will starve is a curse. Yeah. And when you read why Noah was named the way he was named in
Mhm.
Genesis 5:29, he was called that because his father said, "May he bring us relief from our work and the painful labor of growing food from the earth." So post fall, rest literally takes on the connotations of put down your struggle to survive.
Right.
Pre-creation, rest takes into Shabbat takes into consideration a way of being. So Exodus 20 rest is involved in Genesis 2 Shabbat, right? Genesis 2 Shabbat is a way of being, like how joy is a way of being.
Yeah.
But there are some things that you have to do to maintain joy as a way of being. And that's Exodus 20.
Right.
That's Exodus 20's rest. So Exodus 20's rest says, you can't celebrate and relate to God if you're busy holding on to survival. Cease and put it down. And to weld your point into it, Bobby, this will become a part of your identity.
Yes.
Here is a people who weirdly, once a week, Israelites, they're not trading their armies, they're not farming, they're putting down survival. You realize how keeping the Sabbath opened the Israelites to all kind of things if God
Mhm.
permitted.
Mhm.
So that's a part of the distinction I would see as
Okay.
well.
Thank you. Um, we transition into the bigger picture where we talk about the Sabbath isn't just about rest, which is a word we have been throwing around a lot for the past 50 something minutes. It's also about remembrance. So, creation, I'm going to highlight three things. Creation. Sabbath reminds us that we are made in God's image and not the image of our work, which is something Theo preempted. So that we can see in Genesis 2, verse 2 and 3. Sabbath also reminds us about redemption. In Deuteronomy 5, verse 15, God says Israel should keep the Sabbath as a reminder, right? Reminder. Let me read the exact thing. Deuteronomy. Oh my gosh, I lost my Deuteronomy 5, verse 15. Remember, I'm reading from the New Living Translation. It says, remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, but the Lord your God brought you out with his strong hand and powerful arm. That is why the Lord your God has commanded you to rest on the Sabbath day. So I read that in particular because I know slavery is another can of worms, right? But the truth is, it's the Sabbath tells us that we're free. We are no longer slaves to work or to pressure. It reminds us of redemption. And finally, restoration. Every single Sabbath, so from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, points us forward to heaven. Something I'm looking forward to,
Yeah.
where we'll experience eternal rest in Christ. So, the bigger picture about the Sabbath is also not just rest but remembrance. Remembrance about creation, redemption, and restoration. Listeners, I want us to, if nothing, take from here that every Sabbath is like a weekly taste of eternity. It's like a mini camp meeting with God, if I could term it like that, a mini camp meeting with God. And if we think of it like that, because a lot of us, when we're burdened or anything, we say we can't wait to go heaven, can't wait for, that salvation and eternal rest. Let us treat the 24 hours that we get as that weekly taste of eternity. So, Theo, in a world where we spoke about that's constantly rushing and it's constantly restless, what message does the Sabbath give young people about slowing down? And not even just young people, but all of us, about slowing down and finding our worth in God.
Um, Sabbath has to compete with always on social media, excitement being the go-to or entertainment. And it's a big ask, Bobby, it's a big ask. Slowing down, spiritual time, rest and restoration. Am I really gonna trade TikTok for that? Am I gonna? That's literally the question. That's what it's coming down to. I would say this. God help me. In a 24/7 world, there, you know how people talk about love, and they have this image of what it would be like to be loved by, really, to be known by somebody, to be to have your dreams come true, not just self-love. Nobody ever compares self-love to a partner's love. One ranks above the other every time, right? And you have this vision in your mind. Even if you don't have it, you recognize the worth of it. And you're like, yeah, one day I would say to young people, uh, God has put down love for you once a week. Even though you might have been through a broken relationship, you still one day have that dream that you'll
Mhm.
find one. I would advise you that God has put down love for you on a day called Sabbath, and it is worth pausing once a week, if no other time else, seeking after them. And you see, when you find it, it's going to be so worthwhile. There are great many things that are distracting you from it. There are so many things that want to take the place of it, but you know that you need something like this. And it's worth the work to find the Sabbath. I promise you.
All right, thank you. I have a question here coming in. It says, growing up in the church, the Sabbath did seem like a chore. And even though I found the joy of it, entering the working world made it feel like a chore again. So, how can I find back the joy of the Sabbath in such a fast paced world, too?
Yeah, we sort of answered this at the start. The answer about idolatry, right? You have to come to some realizations. My job is not my source. I do not depend on. I'm going
But
to go to
Theo,
my
Theo,
real
Theo,
source.
Theo, we
Hold
can
on.
talk, Theo, but can you imagine a
Yes.
person who have, like, I won't even say don't have anything, but literally paycheck to paycheck. And if no paycheck or if the money even $10 short, it affects your livelihood for the week or for the month. You know, how do we really share that with someone who that is their reality, so they acknowledge, that really your work should not be your source. However, it's like, without putting effort into this work or making sure that this work gets done, I'm hungry, my kids are hungry, they don't get to go to school, or I can't put gas in the car, I can't pay rent, etc. Because the reality of life also sometimes tend to be that barrier in why we struggle to appreciate the gifts that have been given to us by God.
Mhm. I will say this without apology. God trumps the realities of life. And most of the time, when we put up the realities of life and be like, but what if I don't do this? It's not because you have tried God, He has failed you. It's because you haven't tried God. Right? It's because you haven't. You say, I'm so afraid. What if Peter said that when Jesus said, hey, come, step out on the water? But even for those few moments, he trusted him.
I was
Listen,
about to say, because he did say that.
yeah,
He
Bobique, I'm not talking theory, and I'm not trying to tell somebody that you shouldn't work hard, you shouldn't be ambitious, you shouldn't strive to make ends meet. But it's either we believe God or we don't believe God. It's either when God says your bread and your water will be sure if you trust me, or we don't believe Him. And belief is only real if you have ever put it to the test. So perhaps somebody is listening here and they have a challenge. And as a pastor, I have seen this over and over. When people say, listen, I know that the Sabbath is right. I want to come to your church, but I have work that day. Right? And here's where belief must now be tested. God has laid down something for us. He has laid a blessing in it. And he says, you claim it by doing this. I always say, yeah, God, I know you said that, but you're just not going to have it. All right. I'm not speaking in theories here. When we trust God, God will come through for us. I have been in the, not over the Sabbath, but I have been in the moments where God has given a direction and there was no money to go in that direction. I have been in those moments where the job and the expenses did not line up. But I have also continuously been in the moment where I'm not dying for hunger because my God is
true.
more than the job.
That is
I
so
have
true.
lived that.
Mm-hmm.
And
That
when
is
our hands are tightly gripping on we're talking about work right now. I was saying, God, if I move one finger, mega dead for hungry. Are you really? If you have given God your case, are you really make a dead for hungry to keep his Sabbath? You know one. Sorry, Bobby, you mash
no
man card,
problem.
man. You know one. This one wasn't about Sabbath, but I face this about tithing.
About
Yeah,
what?
tithing and
Oh,
offering, especially
no. Yes, yes, yes. I was thinking about it
so.
when you were talking earlier.
Yes, man. So
Yeah.
I'm there and I'm like, government take tax, Carolina come out. If I pay 10% of my growth, then for hungry.
You know what
But
you
it, man, but it would not leave me alone. And my wife and I, 1 year, we decided, listen, while these things are deductions, I'm going to tithe the goods, not the net. I'm
No.
going to prove the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
We're still waiting to die for hunger. And sometimes
No,
the money, yeah,
that
sorry,
is
let me stop.
that is so true, Theo. Like that tithing when you were talking earlier, I was just like, listen, Sabbath wasn't on my mind. It was tithing, and I learned from as a child. But when you're one thing, pick me and see a mommy. But when you
Correct.
start experiencing, with your bills and the expenses, as I say, not adding up, and you have to return the 10%. And just like you, my husband and I, we're just like, yeah, we need to be faithful because God has been faithful to us. And honestly, listeners, Theo, a month where if you mess this up is harder than a month when you faithfully return your tithe. pay all of your bills, do everything, that month is, even when you think it's not going to work out, you just see God coming through. He's coming through. And that for me is just always like a huge testimony. So a principle that we know try to employ, and I think it can be related to the Sabbath, is when salary comes, the first transaction, the very first transaction is tithe. Outside of,
Put the
your
Lord of
restaurants.
yeah,
Right.
put the Lord of hosts to the test
Right. It's the
with
same thing
his
with
Sabbath.
Sabbath. Right. Be intentional. If you need to, so if you need to turn off the phone, because it doesn't have to be a case where a person, I'm thinking that question could also be, I work so hard, I come home after 8 on Friday. Maybe by Sunday morning I have to go back to work. I'm so tired. It's hard to find joy in the Sabbath. I would say if you need to be radical where you lock off that phone, right? Because the phone is a huge distraction for us all. And you're just like, okay, go on YouTube. For me and my sister, we love a cappella, the group. So as soon as sunset starts ushering in, the TV is just blasting those songs, and for us, it's almost like it just calms our nervous system and prepares us for worship to come. Right. So be intentional with the things that helps in connecting with him. So if you need to turn off the phone, go on YouTube, start playing the songs, or surround yourself with people who help you to find joy in the Sabbath meaning. So like I say, one of the reasons why I was intentional with asking Theo to join us in conversation tonight is because he is a friend where I can see his passion for not just his flock, but those who are around him can appreciate the Sabbath. They know how to demonstrate the joy of the Sabbath, like it's almost his ministry, if I should say so, right? So you can find and surround yourselves with people like that. And also, Theo mentioned that the Sabbath, when he does not have to think about how church going operates, meaning the runnings and the innings of church. Ensure that you are intentional with when you go and worship. The worship service is one that helps you to reconnect. So from Sabbath school all the way to Vespa, just be intentional with those things. So if it's a case where you need to find a church, or ask for just a few months, because it's okay to take a break. As Sabbath school superintendent, I've actually just taken a short break before ask other members of my team to assist with the runnings of Sabbath school, because I needed that break to just find back that level ground and that balance and appreciating the gift that's been given to me. And that helped me. Another thing we're afraid to do is ask for, if we realize we're in problems, we're afraid to ask.
Check in
Hmm?
because so very great line of thought here in terms of even taking breaks. But may I invite us to go a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
granular when it comes to the Sabbath. Not
Mm-hmm.
just taking a break from Sabbath work, but reorienting how Sabbath work happens. Because there are people who are listening to this program who are planners. They are planners. And to take a break or to not care about how the thing is flowing, what my daughter
I said hi.
is not really an option. But Bobby, I say this without apology. Sabbaths, as I have experienced them sometimes, do not need to be so complicated.
No.
Teach, pray, sing. Teachers, teach from your overflow. What you have been studying and reading for yourself, share that with the brethren. It doesn't become a task where you need to destroy your brain Friday night to prepare for Bible class because you're teaching from what you already have. So you need to be having something in the week. Singers, sing with passion the songs of Zion, man. Take songs from the congregation. Preachers, do the same thing that the teachers should do. Preach from your overflow, right? And prayers, pray what is needed
And what is on your heart?
and what is on your heart. Make Sabbath less complex.
And
So to have Sabbath worship doesn't become a job.
So less complex and less program. So I was about to say even administrators. When I say administrators, let's avoid the meetings on the Sabbath as well. So a lot of us,
That could help.
yeah, the meetings on the Sabbath, like let's avoid those little things. And I agree with you. Once we start to see heart coming out of those who are leading out in worship, it helps with you, the receiver in the congregation, in appreciating as well what's happening. And as we're about to close, Theo was a part of the team. Like, we at our church here in Jamaica, we planned an entire Sabbath out in nature. And I remember just the feedback coming from that, kind of what showed me that, wow, young and old, we really, really, really need to reinvent how we understand and teach the Sabbath, because that Sabbath spent in nature from morning literally till evening. Some people, they got to lay down on their blankets and just bask in the sun, or like put them foot in the cold water, because Jamaica is very hot. We
Mm.
sang together, we talked together, worshiped together, like we ate together as well. And the
And we didn't have the rush of,
we
oh, this is
didn't.
coming next, that's
So right,
coming.
some song service and so on. And not only that, a lot of persons are concerned. I've always heard is that one of the issues with talking together on the Sabbath, you don't want to go into conversations surrounding, I guess, like work. That wasn't a challenge
That's
because
not
of just it wasn't. So in order to, and that's why I said to the listener who asked the question, surround yourself with the right people. It really helps. There's a reason why we aren't alone here. We have help, and I hope you find just the right people in your life to help to find back that joy of the 24 hours we were given as a gift. And as we close, here are three reminders about the Sabbath. One, it's not just about what you don't do, it's about what you get to do. Two, Sabbath rest is God's weekly reminder that you are more than your work. Three, Sabbath is a gift. It points us back to creation, to redemption, and forward to eternal rest. So, friends, if you've been treating Sabbath like a checklist of don'ts, maybe, just maybe, it's time to shift your focus. Sabbath is God's weekly invitation to reconnect and reset. It's not just about what we can't do, as I said, it's about what we get to do, which is delight in God, connect with people, and find strength in the week ahead. Let me leave you with this verse. I said some of it earlier, Isaiah 58, verse 13 and 14. If you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, then you will find joy in the Lord. So, Pastor Theo, quickly, if a listener out there is struggling, what's one simple step they can take this week to experience it differently? So, right now,
Mm.
one simple step they can actually put into practice right now as it's the Sabbath.
All right, turn off your radio and go to your bed early and wake up in the morning. So when the program is done, don't turn it off now. Right, but when the program is done, turn off, turn it off. Go to your bed early. Get some of the physical rest. Start your day early tomorrow. Go outside a little bit, listen to the birds. And when you're going to church, go and present God's goodness back to Him tomorrow. Right? Just do that, and I think you'll begin to find a different experience.
As you said that, it's not even tomorrow night, it's later today.
Later
How is
today.
it that my 10-year-old sister has grasped the concept of Sabbath better than I have? And even just how the day operates. And that's why when you really said it's how we teach, how we model, and the state of mind. Because if one sun sets for her, it's no longer tomorrow,
It's
it's
today.
later today,
Right.
because she understands that a day is sunset to sunset. So if we really teach things the right way and teach it well, it will help us to have a better understanding and appreciation of God and of what He has bestowed on us. So may Sabbath always be a joy, always be a blessing, and a taste of heaven for us. And we're going to pray together. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you once again for the Sabbath, for giving us the 24 hours, carving out this day in your wisdom for us. We are grateful. I am super grateful. We thank you for this platform where we could have this conversation. We thank you for the team at Flashpoint Media Ministry. We thank you for Pastor Theo and family. Lord, help us to leave here with, if not even a better understanding, but a start to understanding the 24 hours that you have given to us and how it ought to be spent, and understanding that joy, the joy of the Sabbath, is a state of mind, and the work that we're so fixated on and think that it's productivity is a need, and without productivity we are lagging behind. That actually takes the place of you. It becomes an idol in our lives. Help us to remove that. Help us to put you to the test and to trust you, knowing that you are our source, you are our sustainer, and the Sabbath that you have given us is a weekly taste of what is to come in heaven, and to just bask in that. I thank you, O Lord, for all that you have done for every one of us, our listeners and our viewers. And Lord, I ask that you continue to bless us, and whatever it is that is plaguing us. Because one thing that we normally say is, oh, on the Sabbath, we need to put aside our burdens and come to you. But Lord, you want us to take them to you. So I present everyone within the hearing of my voice, whatever it is that may be bothering them. Is it health, financial aid, family struggles? Please, I'm asking to be their comfort and their guide, and help them to know that you are waiting with open arms to receive us and our troubles. You are more than our troubles. And Lord, help us to know that even if it's a case where these burdens feel so heavy, it doesn't stop us from enjoying this day that you have given to us. So Lord, thank you. Continue to bless us. Help us have a good night's rest. And Lord, keep us safe. In your name I pray. Amen. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Open Portal. And a special thanks to my friend, Pastor Theodore Henry, for sharing, and also Emberlyn for sharing with us for the last couple of minutes in this conversation. Until next time, remember, Sabbath is more than just don'ts. It's God's gift of rest, joy, and renewal. Happy Sabbath, everyone. See you next week. Not me,
Happy
but
Sabbath.
Open Portal.
Holy time, the day is ending with the setting of the sun. Holy time, the day has ended, now the Sabbath has begun. I can feel the blessings falling, sanctifying heart and mind. I can hear the Spirit calling me from care to holy time. Holy time, now God is with us. I can feel His presence near. I can hear His still small voices, heaven's peace and joy to share. God, I know that you are with me. I have always seen the signs, but there is nothing quite as
special, like when we meet for holy time.